Mr. Edit Man presents, what is the worst thing that you have seen a coworker do and still avoid being fired? A guy at the plant I work at scrapped $360,000 in airplane parts because he did not even bother to look at the work instructions. He just drives a forklift now. Accidentally send the last 3 years of account details / back statements from one company to their direct competitor. Had a boss storing pictures of himself in only his wide open bathrobe on company servers. It was reported to HR, but was not fired for it. Later he was arrested as part of an undercover sting, where he thought he was meeting a 15-year-old girl about 500 miles away. Way too many questions / comments to reply to all of them. More details. The images were stored in a shared folder used by a few employees. The guy was our id manager, so he should have known better than storing them there. Assuming the pictures were taken using a work camera, because digital cameras were very expensive at that time and the company had a few. Before he left for the weekend to meet the girl, he had asked to use the digital camcorder I had for work. He told me he needed it to make a video of his home possessions for insurance purposes, but I was suspicious of that, so I told him I needed it for work. We found out he was arrested when he called the computer room collect from jail. This was later in the evening. When he no-showed for work that day, we did not accept the charges, but called back later to see what he was charged with. At that time we were told solicitation of a minor, but the whole details came out later when he was on the local news station. HR rep found out about a person's elective surgery and made fun of her with a former employee. Let me recap. This person knew about an employee's private medical information because she worked with our healthcare plan in her role as HR and shared that private information with another person for the sole purpose of mocking the employee. She was not fired. Worked with a guy who punctured the main gas line to our shop 3 separate times. It was a construction company and he somehow was still my superintendent, although he could have blown up the shop. My dad's foreman once put gas line in something that needed water and ruined an entire asphalt driveway. He's old and forgetful, and only works to get away from his wife. I knew an elder gentleman who accidentally primed a well pump with the 5-gallon jug of kerosene, rather than water. After that incident, the tap water was no longer allowed to be used for anything food related. Drill a hole clean through a condensate line and have the ceiling of a 3-car garage collapse when the drywall gave. Me, I'm that guy. Ask me anything. How did you not die? Barely. I had 3 days of in my office. Now I was honest. It was one of those jobs with more than one teams of 2. And another guy was the lead. But as soon as I saw pictures of the devastation I knew it was my fault. I told my boss that was not X's fault. I did that. I made a 1 in a million shot. I could not do it again if I tried. My boss said my honesty saved my job. But I'm at 2 strikes right now. That policy saved my ass too. Blew up a fairly expensive phase converter in my 2nd month as an apprentice electrician. Through equal parts sloppiness and ignorance. My boss came in the next day and asked why there was a burnt up freck drive in the shop, and I told him exactly what happened. He just kinda gave me a little malarkey and told me not to do it again. Turns out my journeyman told him what happened already, and if it said anything besides what I said he was gonna king me on the spot. Own your backups. It's generally the best policy. I know someone who managed to close an entire supermarket early for the first time in its history, costing the company several thousands of pounds, because they tried to set a clock on a computer back an hour to avoid missing some deadline for a daily routine. He said it seemed such a good idea at the time. Worst coworker ever was the credit mooch. He would constantly horn in on other people's projects, getting his name added to them to make it look like he was doing malarkey when he actually not. If people tried to assign him any work on said project, he would have a personal emergency or a virus would make him lose all his work, or his schedule is booked with other project, or the worst, he would pull some sucker in to help him with it, and said sucker would end up doing it all in utter frustration. Because he was so good at stealing credit, he managed to get top marks on his reviews despite doing absolutely zero actual work for the company. I know at least 4 people quit due to this guy getting better raises than they did. Far as I know, they never actually got rid of him. Guy at my wife's old job was brought in because he was really good at selling the services they provided. Proceeded to send dick pics to the women at work and solicit nudes from them. Women said to stop, or he'd take it up with management, and it subsided some. Solicited nudes from a new chick who asked my wife about it, and my wife went to management with everything and said this guy's out or I'm quitting. Well, she quit. Guy's still there, but most the original female staff has quit. As an assistant to the manager at a Valvoline instant oil change, I was dealing with an unreasonable customer that had just spit at a female employee that he did not want working on his car. He did not know that the guy under his car was her boyfriend. The guy comes up the steps, grabs an oil gun, and starts pumping 10W30 all climate into the guy's window as he's frantically trying to start the car and roll up the window. The employee was reprimanded pretty hard, but it was understood why he did it. No charges were filed. The franchise owner paid a lot of money to have the guy's car cleaned. Obviously, I never saw him again. Edit. I never saw the customer again. If I remember correctly, the employee was suspended for a week. Stole a bunch of Mark tools. They were painted white. Showed everyone in the shop pictures of his deer with said tools in the background. Gets reported. Boss calls him on it. He said, "You got me. I stole a gallon of white paint." Never heard the boss laughing so hard. Year later or so he gets promoted, lol. After already being disciplined and essentially demoted for doing his job terribly, my coworker drunk texted all of our managers in the middle of the night asking why they did not love him. It's been about 2 weeks and I haven't not seen him since. But has not gone. Not the worst thing he could have done, but I cringe thinking about it. Not the same thing, but I drunkenly sent a dick pic to my work group chat and am still absolutely mortified till this day. Obligatory, not me but my wife. She had a co-worker that literally punched a customer. Was not fired. He later got into a physical altercation with another co-worker. Was not fired. Then he wrapped my wife's hair around her throat and play choked her. Still was not fired. Finally, he got into yet another altercation with a co-worker and pulled a gun on him, all while on the clock. Then he was fired. Had a co-worker as a standard business practice falsely condemn furnaces in winter to pressure home ER owners into buying new systems and pad his commission check. I could not do anything as I had no direct proof, but he would joke about it all the time. It did finally catch up with him when one customer smelled BS and called other companies with advanced testing machines. Took those results and sued the poop out of him. I ended up working for that second company and haven't not looked back. This dude walks a server out of the server room every 6 months or so to sell on eBay. We have literally no security except the front door. But the owner is so ancient and out of touch I doubt she even remembers things are being stolen. We had a net guy that was stealing old laptops after we replaced them for employees with new ones. Funny thing was that we did not give him a raise for 5 years since we knew about it. And apparently he did not want to quit either out of fear of being discovered or due to the extra money he was making. His raise would have been worth more than the laptops, so we just let it continue. Nothing. Documenting work as completed when no actual work had been done. Management knew or was suspicious of it, but not so much as a write-up or reprimand. Eventually, management changed, figured out no work was being done, called it fraud, and canned them. The job was easy too, and good money. I do not get why they didn't not just do the work. I work in a medical marijuana state. One guy neglected to check a dry room for a few days assuming all was well. All was not well at all. The dehumidifier crapped out while the plants were being hung to dry and sat in a warm, dark room for 3 days before it was someone else's responsibility to check it. By that point every single plant was coated in mold and we had to throw out a little over $1 million worth of product. Side note, I had never done the math to see what he cost us until now and am mad all over again. His only punishment was to be denied moving to day shift, but other than that it was forgotten about. Telemarketing co-worker was very obviously a psycho or sociopath. Showed up late every shift by definition. Had quite a temper with authority, but would often just cause trouble out of boredom. By his own admission, the most controversial thing he did one particular day was address every client he spoke to by the N-word. Once the manager heard him, he yelled at him outside for 20 minutes and that was the end of it. A week later, this coworker denied it had ever happened, before going on a tangent about how he liked to start arguments with his girlfriend just to see her cry. Ducking sociopath. Edit. Gone attack on a reply I posted here because it seems to have gotten buried. He pronounced it with an R harder than a priest in a room full of altar boys every time. Hey NR. We're generic window and door company. Buy from us. I have studied psychology and the current opinion seems to be that psychopaths are born with a lack of empathy. Sociopaths learn to lose their empathy because of their life situation. TBH I'm not sure why he was not fired. And if I had been manager at the time, I certainly would have fired him on the spot. It was a super lax job though. One of the best typical first job environments you could ask for. Think workaholics with a much smaller office. But the manager liked to pal around with us. 2. We all used silly names and tried to goof around in harmless Super Troopers fashion. But this one guy just did not care where the line was and took everything too far. A coworker jumped out from behind the door at my husband, who is a disabled combat veteran with PTSD, dressed as if he was from the Middle East. He was literally trying to trigger a flashback. No repercussions, as he was a boss friend. 2 weeks later, he fell down some icy steps and broke both legs. Karma took care of that one. Not giving patients their medication at the right time, and generally not giving a duck about them. A friend once told me that, whenever she worked nights with a certain staff member, the patients were always really quiet. This was unusual as it was an acute specialist ward and could be mayhem. She then discovered that the staff member used to just give all the patients unprescribed sleeping tablets when they were on nights to keep them quiet. This was years ago, and I do not know what came of it, but ducking hell. He tried to run over a security officer with his car when the security officer told him he could not park where he wanted to park. Almost succeeded. 2. He automated his entire job and told no one. Help desk it. The guys that come to your desk when phone support cannot solve the problem. He started out writing a simple script using the ticket system's API to assign the good tickets to himself the second they came in. Then he wrote some software to solve those tickets remotely. This was before Chef/Ansible/SCCM/etc. and close out the ticket. Over time, he kept expanding the software until it could solve almost every common issue by itself. He built a scheduler for it, so it would start solving problems at 8 AM every day and stop at 5 PM. It had limits and random time delays, so it would not do something suspicious like solve 50 tickets in a minute. To management, he was the untouchable rock star of the team. Most resolved tickets by a good margin, extremely consistent performance, and was part of why our team was always on the list of top performers at corporate. He got the big raises, bonuses, awards. They even sent him to other facilities around the country to talk to other teams and share our successes. Nobody knew he was strolling in at 10 every day, ducking out at 3, and spent most of the time in between browsing the internet or reading books. No one caught on for 3 years. Then corporate decided to outsource all the help desk teams to some crappy third party. He used his reputation to land a sweetheart job in a different part of the company and took his software with him. The disaster that caused took years to recover from. I know all of this because I was that asshole. You have made it until the end of this video. Now listen here and listen here closely. Like and subscribe for more curated content from Mr. Edit Man. Thanks for watching.